As I sat at my desk, memories of the past 30 years with my wife flooded my mind, especially our honeymoon. I found myself reminiscing about the most cherished moments of my life, those unforgettable days in Florida with Jocelyn. Thinking back on that trip always fills me with a deep sense of nostalgia and gratitude. It was such a magical time that it remains one of my most treasured memories. From the very start, it felt like we had stepped away from all the worries of the world, entering a peaceful, almost dreamlike space. Hand in hand, we wandered along Clearwater Beach, the warm waves gently washing over our feet. The scent of jasmine lingered in the air, wrapping us in an atmosphere of romance and tranquility. But it wasn't just the breathtaking scenery that made that time so special. It was the experiences we shared. Hiking through dense forests, we stumbled upon hidden waterfalls, each discovery deepening our appreciation for the sheer beauty of nature. Standing there, surrounded by the raw power and magnificence of the landscape, it felt as if we were completely in sync with the world around us. Our cozy beachside cottage in Key West offered the most stunning views of the sunsets. Every evening, the sky turned into a masterpiece of colors, and as we held each other close, there was nothing but love and devotion between us. The nights felt like pure magic, starting with candlelit dinners under the stars right on the beach, where we indulged in fresh seafood and local delicacies. But more than anything, it was Jocelyn's gentle smile that made every moment unforgettable. That trip wasn't just a vacation, it was a celebration of our love, filled with memories that have stayed with me ever since. Lost in my thoughts, I was suddenly pulled back to reality by my secretary. She smiled, clearly noticing my good mood, and playfully asked, "Did you win the lottery or something?" I chuckled and told her that Jocelyn had been incredibly sweet lately, making me feel appreciated in a way I hadn't in years. It almost felt like we were on a second honeymoon. For the first time in ages, I found myself thinking about her constantly. Over the past 2 weeks, I had called her several times a day, just to hear her voice, feeling like a love-struck teenager again, and I didn't mind one bit. I was happy, and I wanted that feeling to last forever. Jocelyn and I have always had a strong marriage, but after 3 decades, it's easy to slip into a routine. Lately, though, she had been more affectionate than ever, craving closeness almost every night, and even bringing back some of the little habits we had when we were younger. I didn't question this newfound surge of affection, believing it was simply a beautiful renewal of our bond, one that filled me with nothing but excitement. I left work early that day, excited to pull off a romantic surprise for Jocelyn. I bought 2 dozen roses, penned a heartfelt note, and picked up her favorite bottle of wine along with a box of chocolate-covered strawberries. My plan was to tell her just how much I loved her, and then reveal the secret I had been keeping, a 7-day cruise I had booked just for us. With a smile on my face, I pulled into the garage, eager to see her. Climbing the stairs to the kitchen, I expected to find Jocelyn there. But instead, I was greeted by our daughter, Sharon, who was sitting at the table. I leaned down, kissed her on the forehead, and asked, "Hey sweetie, where's your mom?" Just a couple of weeks earlier, they'd had a serious conversation. "Sharon, I'm not sure about this," Jocelyn had confessed. "I love your dad deeply, and I'm worried that going through with this will hurt him." "Mom, Dad loves you, and he'll understand," Jessica had reassured her. "You said yourself that you need something different, something more than what you've been getting. Dad's not getting any younger, but he'll understand your needs and let you have this one experience. Sharon, I don't think I can stand in front of your father and tell him I'm going out with another man. I can't do it," Jocelyn had insisted, her voice heavy with guilt. "Then let me handle it," Jessica had offered confidently. "Jake is meeting you at the restaurant at 7 p.m., and you'll be ready to leave by 6 o'clock. When Dad gets home, I'll be here to explain everything to him. You'll get the night you've been longing for." "Yes, I agreed to the date," Jocelyn had admitted. "But I'm having second thoughts. It feels wrong. How can I face your father after agreeing to go out with another man?" Jessica had paused before suggesting. "You could keep it from him. Over these 2 weeks, show Dad how much you love him. Make him feel secure, like there's nothing to worry about. And when I explain it all, he'll understand that this isn't about love, it's about having a little fun and making a new friend," she continued. "Reach out to him. Remind him of the man you fell in love with. And when I tell him what's going on, he'll welcome you back with open arms. Trust me, Mom, Dad loves you and has always given you whatever you wanted. This will be no different. Jocelyn had hesitated, still unsure. You really think so? She'd asked. Maybe you're right. She finally agreed. After all, it's just one night. It doesn't mean I'm leaving your father. Having a bit of fun 30 years later shouldn't be a big deal. I'll show him just how much he means to me every night until the date, and when I get back, I'll do everything I can to make him the happiest man alive. She had made up her mind. I just need to make him feel loved and appreciated. He's a really great guy, and this experience will be one of a kind for me. Jessica had smiled, pleased that her mother was starting to come around. Exactly, Mom. Now I've got to get home and cook dinner for Adam. I decided to leave work early, excited to set up a romantic surprise for Jocelyn. I picked up 24 roses, wrote a heartfelt note, and grabbed her favorite bottle of wine along with a box of chocolate-covered strawberries. Tonight I planned to tell her just how much she meant to me and surprise her with the 7-day cruise I had secretly booked for us. Feeling eager to see her, I pulled into the garage with a smile on my face. I climbed the stairs to the kitchen, fully expecting to find Jocelyn there. But to my surprise, it was our daughter Sharon, sitting at the table. I walked over, kissed her on the forehead, and asked, "Hey sweetie, where's your mom?" Just a couple of weeks ago, Jessica and Jocelyn had a serious conversation. "Sharon, I don't know about this," Jocelyn had confessed. "I love your dad deeply, and I'm worried that if I go through with this, it'll hurt him." "Mom, Dad loves you, and he'll understand," Jessica had assured her. "You said yourself that you need something different, something more than what you've been getting. Dad's not getting any younger, but he loves you enough to let you have this one experience. I don't think I can look your father in the eye and tell him I'm going out with another man," Jocelyn had admitted, clearly struggling with the idea. "It just feels wrong." "Then let me take care of it," Jessica had offered. "Jake is meeting you at the restaurant at 7 p.m., and you'll be ready to leave by 6 o'clock. When Dad gets home, I'll be here to explain everything to him. You'll get the night you've been longing for." Yes, I agreed to the date, Jocelyn had acknowledged. "But I'm having second thoughts. It just doesn't feel right. How can I face your father after agreeing to go out with someone else?" Jessica had thought for a moment before saying, "You could keep it from him, at least for now. During these 2 weeks, show Dad just how much you love him. Let him see that there's nothing to worry about. And when I explain it all, he'll understand that this isn't about love, it's just about having a little fun and making a new friend." She continued, "Reach out to him. Remind him of the man you fell in love with. Make him feel special and appreciated. When I tell him what's happening, he'll welcome you back with open arms. Trust me, Mom, Dad loves you and has always given you what you wanted. This won't be any different." Jocelyn hesitated, still uncertain. "You really think so?" she asked, her voice laced with doubt. "Maybe you're right," she finally conceded. "It's just one night. It doesn't mean I'm leaving your father. Having a little fun after 30 years shouldn't be a big deal. I'll show him how much he means to me every night until the date, and when I get back, I'll do everything I can to make him the happiest man alive." She had resolved to go through with it. "I just need to make him feel loved and appreciated. He's a wonderful man, and this experience will be a one-of-a-kind adventure for me." Jessica had smiled, satisfied that her mother was feeling more confident. "Exactly, Mom. Now I've got to get home and make dinner for Adam." "Thanks, sweetie. And say hi to Adam for me," Jocelyn said warmly. Then, with a playful grin, she asked, "So, when are you two finally going to make me a grandma?" Jessica laughed and teased. "Soon, Mom. We've talked about it, and we're planning to start trying in a few months." She waved goodbye and headed out the door. Left alone in the art studio that David had built for her in the backyard, Jocelyn sat staring at her latest project. Lately, her creativity had been stifled, weighed down by the thought of being with another man. The guilt was suffocating her artistic flow, until she remembered Sharon's words. Suddenly, the brush seemed to glide effortlessly across the canvas, vibrant colors and raw emotion coming to life. Finding that peace of mind convinced her she was doing the right thing. She truly believed that David would understand someday. As she lost herself in thought, she murmured, "David might be upset at first, but I can make him understand. I love him so much. He's been an amazing husband and father. I'll show him how much he means to me and be the best wife I can be." On the first night of her plan to reignite the spark in their marriage, she decided to surprise him. Right after her shower, she slipped into his favorite baby doll nightgown, paying extra attention to her hair and makeup. When David walked through the door, she greeted him wearing the nightgown and heels, then led him straight to the bedroom. She surprised him with an intimacy they hadn't shared in a long time, and the joy on his face filled her heart with warmth. "Jocelyn, that was the best homecoming I've had in years." "What brought this on?" David asked, his eyes shining with affection. She smiled up at him and said, "I just wanted to remind you how much I love you and how special you are." "Did you enjoy it?" "I did," he replied, pulling her closer. "It's been way too long. I didn't realize how much I missed this." He kissed her passionately, and they continued to share a night filled with love and laughter. For a brief moment, Jocelyn found herself second-guessing her plans with Jake. Over the next few weeks, David seemed like a changed man. He was happier, more affectionate, and far more attentive than he had been in years. It felt as if they had rediscovered each other, and Jocelyn found herself genuinely happy and more content than she had been in a long time. One afternoon, she confided in Sharon, "You know, honey, I'm starting to rethink my date with Jake. Your dad and I have found our spark again. Maybe I don't need this experience after all." Jessica responded with a supportive smile. "That's wonderful, Mom. But maybe don't cancel just yet. Enjoy these next couple of weeks and see how things go. If everything stays good, you can always cancel at the last minute. I'm sure Jake will understand. Just remember, though, this opportunity might not come around again." Jocelyn considered Sharon's words and finally agreed. "You might be right." Curiosity got the best of her, and she asked, "So, tell me more about Jake. I know he's your friend's dad, but can you remind me about his situation?" I asked Sharon, curiosity getting the best of me. "Sure," Jessica began. When his wife, Susan, was diagnosed with a brain tumor, Jake devoted himself completely to her until she passed. After that, he became a recluse, struggling with depression and overwhelming loneliness. It's been tough for him to even consider dating again. He's just been so lost without her. As I listened to Sharon's words, something clicked in my mind. Before I could fully process it, she continued, "I told him about how much you love Dad, but also how you've been wanting to reignite things in your relationship. We talked about the idea of you going on a date, not to start some long-term romance, but just to explore a friendship and maybe more, without you having to give up Dad." Sharon's eyes softened as she added, "When he saw your picture, his whole face lit up. He smiled and asked, 'Do I really have a chance to take her out?' I told him, 'Absolutely. Once Mom hears about you and sees your photo, she won't pass up this opportunity.' But he was concerned about Dad," Jessica admitted. "He asked, 'Will your dad be okay with her going out with me, considering she's his wife?'" A sly smile crossed Sharon's face as she recalled her reply. I told him, "Trust me. Dad would do anything to make Mom happy. You two need each other right now, and I think you could be great friends. Leave the rest to me." Her words echoed in my mind, leaving me lost in thought. The very next day, Jake called. We had a lovely conversation, and before long, he asked if I'd like to join him for dinner. The idea of spending an evening together thrilled me, and his compliments about my photo made me feel like a schoolgirl again, complete with butterflies in my stomach. I hadn't felt this kind of excitement in years. We both eagerly agreed to meet for dinner, but when he offered to pick me up, I insisted on meeting him at the restaurant instead. Over the next few days, our texts became more playful, and the anticipation for our date continued to build. As the night approached, I couldn't help but notice that our conversations were becoming flirtatious, far more than I would have expected. If someone were to look at my phone, they might have questioned my loyalty. But I was caught up in the excitement of something new, and I couldn't stop thinking about the date, even though thoughts of David were always in the back of my mind. Despite my growing anticipation, I poured even more energy into my marriage. Every night, I made David feel special, and he couldn't stop smiling. Yet, deep inside, I carried this secret longing for something more, a fulfillment that went beyond anything I'd ever imagined. Meanwhile, I found myself reflecting on Sharon. She had grown into such a remarkable woman, someone I was incredibly proud of. Yet I regretted not spending more time with her while she was growing up. I had tried my best to provide for her, and be there whenever I could, but now I wished I had cherished those moments more. Snapping out of my thoughts, I walked into the kitchen, surprised to find Jessica sitting at the table. I greeted her with a warm smile, feeling a hint of embarrassment. "Sweetheart, what brings you here? And where's your mom?" I shot out of my chair, knocking it over as fury surged through me. "Are you telling me you set your mother up on a date with your friend's father? Is this real? Did you really do this?" Jessica cowered under the weight of my anger as I loomed over her, my chest heaving as I paced the room in disbelief. "Answer me, Sharon! My wife, your mother, is out with your friend's dad because of you. How could you do this to me?" "I'm sorry, Daddy. I really am," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It sounds bad when you put it that way, but I did it out of love, for both of you, and for him." "Love? Love for them?" I shouted, my voice breaking with pain. "What about me? Do I mean nothing to you? Am I just some fool you can toss aside while you play matchmaker?" I felt my hands clench into fists, my body shaking with rage. "Where is she, Sharon? Where is your mother? And what did you mean when you said she won't be home until tomorrow?" Sharon's face went pale, and her voice was barely audible. "They went to a restaurant, but I don't know which one," she confessed, her eyes fixed on the floor. "And yes, they're spending the night together. But it's just this one time, I swear. She'll be back tomorrow, and she only loves you. All she's been saying for the last 2 weeks is how much she loves you." I stood there, stunned, disbelief and anger twisting in my chest. My heart shattered as the realization sank in. So, all this time, I thought her affection was genuine. But it was just to ease her guilt? My voice grew cold as bitterness replaced the pain. "Well, Sharon, this won't end the way you or your mother think it will. I promise you that." Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded with me. "It's not like that, Dad. She never pretended to love you. She's been doing everything she can to show you how much she cares. Can't you give her just this one night? You've had 30 great years together. She loves you so much and can't imagine life without you. Please, don't throw it all away." I looked at her, my eyes cold and unforgiving. "No, Sharon," I replied, my voice steely. "That ship sailed the moment your mother agreed to go out with another man." My chest tightened as a wave of betrayal crashed over me. "Who is this guy anyway?" He's my friend Mary's dad," Jessica admitted, her voice trembling. "He's really nice, and I think you two would get along if you met." "Oh, really?" I shot back, sarcasm dripping from every word. "You think we'd be great buddies, huh? Maybe we can start hanging out, and I can offer him your mom on the weekends. Is that it? Maybe we can even be drinking buddies while I watch him date my wife." Jessica sank into her chair, her face crumpling as the weight of her actions hit her. She had never seen me this angry before, and my biting sarcasm cut through her like a knife. Her shoulders shook as silent sobs escaped her. I paced the room, my mind racing, my heart pounding as I tried to regain control of my emotions. After a few moments, I stopped and turned to face her, my voice low and filled with venom. "Listen carefully, Sharon," I said, my words sharp and deliberate. "I want you to leave. Now." Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. "Dad, please." "No," I interrupted, my tone ice cold. "You've done enough. I can't even look at you right now. Leave. Go home to your husband, and tell him how you've helped your mother betray me." Sharon's face crumbled, and she rose to her feet on unsteady legs. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. Her shoulders slumped, and she shuffled to the door, glancing back at me one last time before walking out. As the door closed behind her, the house fell silent, but my mind was in chaos. My chest felt tight, and I struggled to breathe, the enormity of the betrayal crashing down on me. I looked at the roses, the wine, the chocolates, all the symbols of my love and devotion. And I felt sick. I sank into the chair, my body heavy with heartbreak. The woman I adored, the woman I had spent my life with, was out with another man. And my own daughter had helped make it happen. A cold emptiness settled in my chest as the reality of it all took hold. The life I thought I knew was gone, shattered in an instant. And I was left alone, surrounded by the remnants of a love that no longer existed. "I need to be alone to process what you and your mother have done to me," I said, my voice cold and detached. "Don't call me. Don't write. Don't try to reach me. You are no longer my daughter. You're dead to me. Do you understand? I'm not your father anymore. Dad, no. Please don't say that. I love you, and I want to stay here with you tonight." She sobbed, her face buried in her hands. "Mom and I planned for me to stay so you wouldn't be alone. Please, don't send me away. Leave, Sharon," I commanded, my voice devoid of any emotion. "Your level of disrespect makes me question whether you ever truly respected me as your father. You're your mother's daughter through and through. I worked hard for years to give you and her a better life, and this is how you repay me? Get out. I have no daughter now." Through her tears she begged, "Dad, I love you. Don't say this. Just wait for Mom to explain everything tomorrow. You've had 30 wonderful years together. She might have one thing or two, or 1,000. I said bitterly, my jaw clenched. But she'll never have me again. Forgiveness is out of the question. Everyone involved will pay, including the man who took your mother out. Now leave." Tears streamed down her face as she fled the house, her sobs echoing through the hallway. I watched her go, my heart hardened, my anger burning hot. She had never seen me like this, and the realization of what she'd done hit her like a ton of bricks. She never expected this outcome, never imagined that I'd react this way. She thought I'd understand. But my fury left no room for hope. The door slammed shut, and the house fell silent. I stood there, my fists clenched, my breathing ragged. A cold numbness washed over me. I was alone. Completely and utterly alone. As soon as Jessica left, I dialed Emily's number. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. And again. Each call ended the same way. I left message after message, my voice breaking as I begged her to come home. I pleaded, demanded, and even cried, but there was no response. By 2 a.m., it was clear she wasn't coming back that night. Exhausted from the emotional strain, I collapsed on the couch, my body heavy with fatigue. I stared blankly at the TV, the flickering images washing over me, but I couldn't focus on anything. My mind raced, replaying every moment of our 30 years together, the day we met, the birth of our daughter, the anniversaries, the celebrations. All of it felt tainted now, meaningless and hollow. How could she do this to me? After all those years? Gazing out the window, my eyes fell on the art studio I had built for Emily 2 decades ago. It was her sanctuary, her private space filled with her accomplishments, her paintings, her sculptures, her dreams. My jaw tightened as anger surged back, hotter and more consuming than before. I shot up from the couch, my resolve hardening. If she was going to throw away everything we built, then so would I. Over the next few hours, I made countless trips up and down the stairs, collecting everything that belonged to her. Her shoes, her dresses, her jewelry, all of it went into the studio. I didn't care about organization, I just tossed it all inside, piece by piece. I ransacked our bedroom, yanking open drawers and closets, emptying her side completely. The pile grew larger and larger. I grabbed the photo albums, every single one, including the ones from our wedding. They felt heavy in my hands, the memories inside taunting me, mocking me. I threw them onto the heap without hesitation. Then it hit me, her wedding gown. It was in the attic, along with the baby clothes from when Jessica was born. All those sentimental things she treasured. I dragged them down, adding them to the mountain of her belongings. By the time I was done, the pile was enormous, spilling across the studio floor like a sea of broken memories. At 5:30 a.m., I grabbed a canister of gasoline from the garage. My hand shook as I marched out to the studio, my heart pounding with rage and pain. But as I stood there, staring at the heap of memories, I hesitated. I glanced at my watch. 5:32 a.m. I'd give her until 6 o'clock. If she didn't come home by then, if she didn't walk through that door to explain herself, to at least try to save what was left, then everything would go up in flames. I leaned against the studio door, the gas canister heavy in my grip. I waited, my eyes fixed on the road, my mind a whirlwind of anger, betrayal, and grief. Each passing minute felt like an eternity. The sky grew lighter as dawn approached, but the darkness inside me remained. 5:45 a.m. I could feel my fingers tightening around the handle, my body trembling with anticipation. She had 15 minutes left. 15 minutes to prove that everything we built wasn't a lie. 15 minutes to save our life together from going up in smoke. 15 minutes before I burned it all down. I spent the next few minutes transferring funds, canceling our joint accounts, and packing a few bags. If she didn't show up by 6 o'clock, I'd be gone by 6:05. My hope had burned out, just like my trust in her. I poured gasoline all over the pile of her belongings in the studio. I paused for a moment, the weight of my actions sinking in. But with a deep breath and a heavy heart, I struck the match. The flames roared to life, quickly devouring everything Emily held dear. The fire spread rapidly, its orange glow casting long shadows visible from the street. Without a second thought, I turned and walked away, not looking back. As I drove away, a wave of sorrow hit me hard. Tears streamed down my face as the reality set in. Just like the studio, my once happy marriage had gone up in flames. What I didn't expect was how the fire spread, jumping from the studio to the back porch. Within minutes, it was out of control. Thankfully, the firefighters arrived quickly and managed to contain the blaze before it reached the house. But the damage was extensive. The house itself was rendered uninhabitable due to heavy smoke damage, requiring significant repairs. Shaken and numb, I checked into a motel about 90 miles away, paying in cash to avoid leaving a trace in case the authorities came looking for me. My adrenaline kept me wide awake, but exhaustion soon overtook me, and I collapsed onto the bed, turning off my phone. When I finally woke up, it was noon the next day. The moment I turned my phone back on, it exploded with notifications, dozens of missed calls and texts from Sharon, Emily, and even the sheriff. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, Emily stepped out of the Uber and met Jake at the reception desk. She was nervous but excited, noticing how his eyes scanned her little black dress, taking in the sheer tights and high heels. His gaze lingered on the slight reveal of her cleavage, accentuated by the glimpse of a black bra. Earlier that day, Emily had spent hours at the salon, making sure her hair and makeup were flawless. She was determined to make this one-time encounter unforgettable. When she saw Jake's reaction, her confidence surged. She greeted him with a soft kiss, and they moved to the bar, where he couldn't take his eyes off her legs. Emily felt a rush of excitement, something she hadn't felt in years. Deciding to immerse herself fully in the evening, she silenced her phone to enjoy the night without distractions. The chemistry between Emily and Jake was undeniable. Their flirting felt natural, like they had known each other forever. Something Emily hadn't experienced with David in a long time. By the time they finished their second drink, the hostess announced that their table was ready, and they moved to their seats. The conversation flowed effortlessly, and Emily found herself enjoying every moment. When Jake asked if she was still up for spending the night together, Emily playfully slipped off her heels and ran her foot up his leg, teasing him. He smiled and, without missing a beat, declared it was time to leave. Hand in hand, they made their way to his pre-booked hotel room. As the elevator ascended to the 14th floor, reality hit Emily for a brief second. Thoughts of David flashed through her mind, but before she could overthink it, Jake pulled her close and kissed her passionately. That kiss pushed all thoughts of her husband out of her head. Tonight, she was Jake's. Once inside the room, Jake wasted no time. He unzipped her dress and let it fall to the floor. His touch sent shivers down her spine. Time seemed to stand still as the night unfolded, filled with sensuality and tenderness. Emily found herself completely lost in the moment, surrendering to the experience. Later, When Jake confessed his attraction to her, Emily felt a pang of guilt, but she quickly pushed it aside. This night was about them. They made love again, multiple times throughout the night, and once more in the morning. It was the most intense physical experience Emily had ever had, and she felt a rush of pride for allowing herself this indulgence. The next morning, bathed in sunlight, Jake held her close. "Emily, you're an extraordinary woman," he said softly. "I believe I'm falling in love with you. Can we see each other again?" Emily's heart raced. "Jake," she started delicately. "Last night was amazing, and you're a wonderful man, but I'm married. I can't do this again. It was a one-time thing," Jake urged. "Your husband doesn't seem to mind if you let this continue. I know I can make you happy." Emily hesitated for a moment, then softly replied, "All right, I'll think about it." She gave him one last deep kiss. As much as she had enjoyed being with Jake, her heart belonged to David, and she hoped he could forgive her for what she had done. After breakfast, Jake drove Emily home. She switched on her phone for the first time since the night before and was overwhelmed by the number of missed calls and texts. When she saw David's messages, a wave of guilt washed over her. She had caused him so much pain, and now she had to face the consequences. As Jake pulled into her neighborhood, Emily's stomach churned. The consequences were just beginning. Emily's heart sank when she spotted the fire trucks and police cars outside her house. Though the front of the house seemed intact, panic gripped her as she wondered what had happened. "Mom, where are you?" she muttered under her breath. Sharon's voice came through the phone as soon as Emily answered. "I'm almost home, sweetie. What's going on?" "There was a fire at the house. We've been trying to reach you all night, but your phone was off. Dad's missing. No one knows where he is." Emily's mind flooded with worry. "I'll be home in a minute. I'll call you back." As Jake pulled into her street, Emily saw the firefighters gathered near the house. A knot tightened in her stomach as she hurried toward them. "Are you the homeowner?" one of the firefighters asked as curious neighbors watched her arrive with Jake. Yes, I'm Emily Carter," she replied, her heart pounding. "Well, Mrs. Carter," the firefighter continued, "we managed to save most of the house. Only the back porch was damaged, but you won't be able to stay here until the smoke damage is cleaned up. Unfortunately, the studio at the back couldn't be saved." Emily's knees buckled, and Jake caught her just in time, guiding her to sit on the curb. Her mind raced. "Is everything in the studio gone?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "I'm afraid so. All that's left are the remains," the firefighter said gently. "We're still investigating the cause of the fire, but a police detective would like to speak with you." Emily stood shakily, heading toward the back of the house, where she was met by Sergeant Roberts. "Mrs. Carter, do you have any idea what might have caused the fire?" he asked, his voice calm yet probing. "No," Emily replied weakly. "I wasn't home last night." "Are you her husband?" the sergeant asked, turning to Jake. "No, just a friend," Jake answered, his face unreadable as the sergeant raised an eyebrow. "Do you know where your husband is?" the sergeant pressed. Emily's heart thudded. "I don't. I haven't spoken to him." "And where were you last night?" the sergeant asked, his tone growing more serious. Emily hesitated, feeling a flush of shame creep into her face. "I was with Jake at the Hilton downtown." The sergeant's eyes narrowed, and she could feel the weight of judgment in his gaze as she stood amidst the wreckage of her life. She had just admitted to the detective that she hadn't spent the night with her husband, and now he was missing too. The detective had more questions. "Mrs. Carter, are you and your husband separated? Do you have any idea where he was last night?" "No, we're happily married," Emily insisted, though the words felt hollow. The guilt was overwhelming. "When you do hear from him, please give him my contact information," the detective instructed, handing her his card. A wave of emotions hit Emily: anger, fear, and a deep, gnawing sense of dread. What had she done? What had she lost? Anger surged through Emily as the weight of the devastation hit her. Her sanctuary, her artwork, all her years of hard work now reduced to ashes. Fear crept in too, a gnawing anxiety about David's rage and what it might mean for their marriage. She had to find him, had to explain herself, or this could be the end. Her phone rang, and she answered immediately. Sharon, have you heard from your dad? No, I haven't spoken to him since last night, Jessica replied, her voice barely audible, breaking under the weight of the situation. Mom, why didn't you stay with him like we planned? He kicked me out and disowned me, Jessica revealed, the pain in her voice clear. Emily's stomach twisted. David had never spoken like that before. If he had really disowned her, it was worse than she could have imagined. When Emily entered the house, the smell of smoke hit her like a punch to the gut. The walls were stained with soot, and their once cozy home was now uninhabitable. Destruction was everywhere. As she walked to the bedroom to gather clothes, her eyes froze when she opened the closet. Everything, her clothes, her shoes, her jewelry, was gone. Her heart raced as she rushed to her nightstand, but her wedding rings were missing too. Panic seized her chest. If David saw the rings gone, he must have assumed the worst. She searched frantically, every room telling the same story. Her things, her life, were gone. A horrifying realization struck her like a blow to the chest. He had destroyed everything. In disbelief, she ran to the studio, hoping that maybe something had survived in the wreckage. Among the debris, she found fragments, photo frames, bits of clothes, nothing intact. It was clear now, David had obliterated it all. He had severed her from his life in one final, devastating blow. Tears streamed down Emily's face as she called Jessica again. I don't know what to do, she cried into the phone. I don't know where to go. Jake offered me a place, but I don't want to see him. I just need to be alone. I've lost your father. Emily sobbed, the weight of her guilt sinking in deeper with each word. Mom, don't say that. Jessica pleaded, her voice breaking. Dad loves you. I know he does. Emily's voice cracked as she responded. I hurt him. I don't blame him. I should have talked to him before all of this. Going on that date, it was a mistake. Don't blame yourself. Jessica insisted. You can stay with us until the house is fixed. We'll buy you new clothes. We'll get you settled. But Emily couldn't focus on that. All of her work, everything she had built over the past 20 years, was gone. Her tears drew the attention of a few neighbors, but she barely noticed. Just then, her phone rang. It was David. Her breath caught as she answered. David? Is that you? Hi, Emily. Came his voice, rough and distant. I know everything. From your daughter. Yes, your daughter. Not mine. You're both dead to me. Emily's chest tightened, her world crashing around her. David's words, sharp and final, left no room for hope. Emily's heart shattered as David's words echoed in her mind. This may be the last time we talk. The finality in his voice was like a blow to her chest. Desperation surged as she pleaded. No, David, please don't say that. I love you. The studio, it's gone. Did you do this? David's voice was cold, detached, and filled with an anger Emily had never heard before. Emily, you did this. Not me. Maybe I didn't physically start the fire, but your betrayal is what burned everything to the ground. When I saw your wedding rings left behind and realized you gave yourself to someone else, you died to me. What you did is unforgivable. David, no. Please, we've had 30 wonderful years together. Can't we talk and work this out? No, Emily, he replied, his voice hard and resolute. You planned to betray me. You gave me 2 weeks of love to ease your guilt, and then cheated with our daughter's help. There's no way to accept or forgive such treachery. David's final words hit her like a knife. This is over. Contact my lawyer for anything further. Goodbye, Emily. David, wait. Emily screamed into the phone, but the line was already dead. She fell to her knees, overwhelmed by the weight of it all. The loss of her marriage, the destruction of everything she had built, it felt like her entire world had been ripped away in an instant. Jessica arrived just as Emily was dialing David's number again, desperate for some kind of answer, but the phone remained silent. Tears streamed down both their faces as they embraced, mourning the loss of everything they had once held dear. They couldn't stay in the wreckage of their home, so they made their way to Sharon's house. Once there, Jessica broke the news to her husband, Ryan, and his reaction was immediate and intense. "Sharon, you arranged a date for your mother with another man, and you knew your dad would be alone. How could you do that to him? He was a good man, and you've shattered him. I'm shocked and disappointed. We need to talk about ourselves now. Having children is on hold until I figure out where your values lie. Because I don't share them." Sharon, stunned by the fierceness of Ryan's anger, had not expected him to react so strongly. But deep down, she knew the real issue wasn't just their future. It was the collapse of her parents' marriage, her father's disappearance, and her mother's shattered happiness. Everything had unraveled because of one night. 5 days later, David returned to the house to assess the damage. He decided not to file an insurance claim, wanting to avoid further costs. He contacted his lawyer and made it clear that the house was his, not part of the settlement. Emily would get half of their savings, but there would be no child support. It was a devastating decision, a final severing of all ties. The situation only grew more complicated when a neighbor who knew Jessica from school called her, telling her that David had returned. Jessica rushed over to the house and found him standing in the bedroom, surveying the damage. Without thinking, she ran to him, tears streaming down her face, and threw her arms around him. "Daddy, I'm so sorry. Please forgive us. We love you," she begged, her voice filled with sorrow. David stood still for a long moment, the tension in the air palpable. The future of their family hung in the balance. Would he forgive them? Or was this the end of everything? The young woman looked at Emily with confusion. "David Carter? I'm sorry, but he doesn't live here anymore." Emily felt a wave of shock and panic wash over her. She'd come to this house, the place she once called home, thinking that perhaps David had been holding on to something, some hope that they could rebuild. But now, in front of her, was the undeniable truth: he had moved on, and there was no longer a place for her. "Where is he?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. The young man, who had remained silent up until now, glanced at the woman and then back at Emily. "He sold the house. Moved out a while ago. I think he relocated to another city." Emily's chest tightened. "Do you know where?" "We don't know," the man answered, a hint of sympathy in his voice. "Sorry." Emily stood there for a long moment, staring at the door, feeling utterly lost. The life she had once known had completely vanished. The house, the man who had been her partner for over 3 decades, the future they had built together, all of it was gone. And now, the man she still loved was nowhere to be found. She turned away, the weight of her reality crushing her with each step. As she walked back to her car, she couldn't shake the feeling of devastation that had been haunting her ever since that fateful night. The night everything changed, the night her marriage ended. She hadn't just lost a home, she had lost her family. David had made his choice, and there was no turning back. The pain of it all was unbearable, but she couldn't undo what had been done. Emily drove aimlessly, unsure of where she was going or what she hoped to find. She just needed to escape the suffocating weight of guilt and regret that consumed her every thought. Meanwhile, Jessica was struggling with her own heartbreak. She had tried everything she could to save her marriage, but nothing seemed to help. Ryan had forgiven her actions, but the scars remained. They tried counseling, but the foundation of their relationship had been shaken to the core. The trust that had once been so solid was now fragile, and Jessica couldn't help but wonder if they could ever truly rebuild it. As the months passed, the impact of their choices reverberated through their lives. David, now living in a new city, had distanced himself from everyone, including Sharon. The pain of betrayal had cut so deep that forgiveness seemed impossible. And as for Emily, her life had unraveled beyond recognition. Once a woman with everything, love, security, a thriving career, now found herself struggling to survive, working at an art gallery to make ends meet, far from the life she had taken for granted. No amount of therapy, no amount of apologies, could undo the damage done. The family she had once been a part of, the life she had once known, was gone. And as she sat in her small apartment, staring at the walls that seemed to close in on her, Emily couldn't help but wonder if she would ever find a way out of the hole she had dug for herself. The past was gone, but the weight of it, of her choices, of her betrayal, remained, a constant reminder of everything she had lost. Jake opened the door to find David standing there, eyes filled with pain and determination. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The weight of everything that had happened hung thick between them, either willing to speak first. Finally, David broke the silence, his voice cold but steady. "You took something from me. Not just my wife, but my entire life. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Jake stood frozen for a moment, clearly caught off guard by the sudden confrontation. He knew he had been reckless, but he hadn't expected David to show up like this, so desperate, so angry. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," Jake said, his voice shaky. "It wasn't supposed to. It wasn't supposed to be anything," David snapped, cutting him off. "You took advantage of my weakness, my trust. I thought my wife was still mine, that our marriage could be saved. But you—" His voice cracked, the raw emotion breaking through. "You helped destroy everything. I thought you were a friend." Jake looked down, unable to meet David's eyes. "I never meant to hurt you. But Emily, she wanted this too. She chose to be with me. I wasn't the only one who betrayed you." David's fists clenched at his sides. "I'm not blaming you alone," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "But make no mistake, you're a part of the destruction. And I will never forgive either of you." David's words hung in the air, final and resolute. He had been shattered by Emily's betrayal, by her choice to seek solace in another man. And now, as he stood there face to face with Jake, it was clear that David had moved past anger and into something far colder, a place where forgiveness was impossible. "You're right about one thing," David continued, his voice hardening. "I'm leaving this behind. I'm starting over. But I will never forget what you both did to me. And I'll never speak to her again. I'm done." With that, David turned and walked away, his footsteps heavy, echoing in the silence of the night. Jake stood there, feeling the weight of the confrontation settle in. He had wanted to leave the past behind, to start fresh, but in that moment, he realized that some things couldn't be escaped, no matter how far you ran. As David disappeared into the night, Jake closed the door slowly, the weight of the guilt and the consequences of his actions settling in. There was no going back now. David sat back in his lounge chair, watching the waves crash against the shore of Costa Rica. The sun had long set, and the cool breeze of the evening wrapped around him like a comforting blanket. The pain of the past, though still present, seemed far away here, distant and muted by the sound of the ocean. He had chosen this place carefully, away from the life he once knew, and it had given him the peace he needed to reflect. His marriage to Emily had been a long chapter of his life, one filled with love, joy, and ultimately heartache. The betrayal had been unbearable, and yet, in this moment, he realized something he had struggled with for so long. Divorce wasn't a failure, it was an escape. An escape from the suffocating weight of a love that had been poisoned by lies. The years he had spent building his life with Emily had been meaningful, but the years spent watching her pull away, watching her fall for someone else, had tarnished those memories. He had given his heart to someone who hadn't valued it, and now he was left with the broken pieces of a life he thought would be forever. Here, in this new place, he had started to rebuild. It wasn't easy. He missed his children, the comfort of his old home, the life he had once imagined he would have. But there was clarity in the solitude. He had the space to breathe, to think, and most importantly, to heal. David had spent too many years giving, too many years thinking that staying was the noble choice. But now, in the calm of the ocean and the silence of his new life, he understood. Staying where you are unappreciated isn't noble. It's foolish. He had put his heart on the line, and Emily had walked away from it. The first few weeks in Costa Rica had been difficult. The silence was deafening at times, the loneliness overwhelming. But he had started to make peace with it. He had come to terms with the fact that he had been wrong, that he wasn't the one who had failed their marriage. It was Emily, and later Jake. They had both played their parts in the unraveling of everything he had built, and now, he had to let go. As the days turned into months, David realized he was moving forward. His heart no longer ached in the way it once did. He had forgiven himself, and the burden of blame no longer felt so heavy. In time, he might even forgive Emily. But for now, he needed to live for himself, to embrace the new chapter of his life without looking back. He wasn't sure what the future would bring. Maybe he would find love again. Or maybe he would continue to live this quiet, solitary life by the sea. But one thing was certain: he would never again settle for a love that didn't see him for who he truly was. He had learned that lesson the hard way, but he had learned it nonetheless. As the night deepened and the stars blinked to life above him, David took a long sip from his beer and leaned back in his chair, letting the peaceful silence of Costa Rica wash over him. He had finally found the peace he had been searching for.